Hey everyone, Howie Fisher from Fisher's Flies. Thanks for checking in. Today I'm tying up a micro Jig Kreelex. This is a smaller version of the traditional one that was tied by Chuck Craft. For the hook, I'm using a Jig Force Long from Fulling Mill in size 14, paired with a slotted tungsten bead and 4.6 millimeter gold. For the thread today, I'm using Veevus 8/0 in a brown. Before I start my thread on, I'm going to add a couple lead wire wraps to keep that bead in place. Once I've got what I want, I'll go ahead and helicopter off my thread and slide those wraps into my bead. Then I'll get started with my thread directly behind those lead wraps, start taking my thread backwards before snipping it off. Before tying my material in, I'm going to go ahead and create a thread base layer on the shank of the hook. For the material that I'm using today is a product from Upavon called Crinkle UpFlash in Peacock. It's a really cool material, very similar to the original Kreelex pattern, Kreelex material, but it comes in a mottled color. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a clump of this material. For this size 14, I'm using probably about 20 strands or half of a pencil size. And I'm going to go ahead and secure this and take thread wraps all the way back to the bend of the hook. And the last couple wraps that I'm going to go ahead and take, I'm going to loosen my thread tension so that it's not too tight. If you make those last couple thread wraps too tight, it'll flare the material out and it'll look a little funny. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and cover up my lead wraps at the bead, and then just start creating a little bit of an even body. It's tempting to cut this tail material now, but leave it unsnipped for now and it'll make your life a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and grab another clump of this Crinkle Flash from Upavon to start tying in the rest of this fly. For the head of this fly, I'm going to go ahead and grab about the same amount of flash. And with this being a jig fly, a micro streamer, I do want to try and keep the material down as much as possible, keep the fly thin. So I'm actually going to reverse tie this in. And if you wanted to, you really could reverse tie this in completely around the shank, but I'm going to do it in two separate sections. So I'm tying the materials in facing forward with a little bit facing backwards, and I'm going to come in and snip that back clump free. So you can see there's almost nothing facing back. I'm going to go ahead and bring my thread in front of that material, and I'm going to go ahead and snip it about the length of the hook. Now I'm going to do the same thing on what will be the top side of the fly. I'm going to go ahead and use the same hank of material and tie it in with a couple wraps. And then really want to make sure you cinch this material down in the space you want it in so that it doesn't roll or move. Again, I'm going to come in and cut those butt sections out. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to snip the material the same length as the bottom to make sure it's all even and the same. Then I'm going to come in with my fingers and push this backwards. If you've ever worked with bucktail, this is the exact same process of reverse tying that in. At this point, what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to pull those fibers backwards and just build up a little bit of a thread dam in front of the materials that I've tied in to start pushing those fibers backwards. Once I've got them to slightly start facing backwards, I'm going to go ahead and whip finish here just to make my life a little bit easier. You can put a lot of thread wraps on the head of this fly, and it may or may not lay the way you want it to. So I'm going to go ahead and whip finish like I said, and then I'm actually going to reach for my Solarez. So here I'm going to use Solarez Bone Dry, and I'm going to go ahead and place a little bit of this Bone Dry around the entire head of this fly. And you want to make sure that a little bit of it soaks into those fibers, because what you're going to do here is you're going to, with the holding materials back, cure it. And that way it's going to go ahead and make those fibers face backwards. So I'm going to turn this around and I'm going to do the same thing. Again, making sure to hit those fibers a little bit so that when you cure it, those materials will face backwards. And you can see here, once you cure it, those materials will face straight backwards. And now for the last step, I'm going to come in and I'm going to cut this tail the length that I want it. You can see here on this, as I tied in that top piece, it actually got pushed back a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and come in and clip these fibers to make sure that they're the same length. This isn't obviously 100% crucial, but it's nice for having consistent streamers. So there you have it. This is the micro Kreelex. Tie them up, fish them. Let me know what you think. Thanks.